Hello, welcome to my first video. In this video, I'm going to be quickly going through this repository. This repository is going to show you how to create a Kubernetes cluster inside of an Azure subscription using Terraform. So I'm going to pause the recording when we're having to do the loading phases. But if you go right here to this URL, and I'll also put this in the description of the video, then it will show you how you can create everything. There is a README. I've tried to make it very descriptive so that you can follow along with everything here. But this video is going to be a live demonstration of everything that you need to do. So, first of all, you need to make sure that you have an Azure subscription. And it needs to be an active Azure subscription. And you're also going to need to get the subscription ID from it. You will need that later on. The way you can get your subscription ID is that you can go over here to subscriptions. You can search for it at the top, and then it will find your subscription. You can get the subscription ID right here. And you can also click on this, which will give you more detail about the subscription, and you can also get it from there. Once you have your subscription ID, you're also going to need to download Terraform command line onto your machine. For this video, I'm going to be using Git Bash. So Git Bash is what I'm going to be using across all my different videos, so all these commands are written for Git Bash. And this will tell you how to download Terraform and make it global on your machine so that you can run Terraform commands from wherever you are. Similarly, you're going to have to do it for Azure command line. So we have the Azure command line installation. So whether you're using Windows, Mac, or Linux, you'll need to install it there. And so you're going to need those before you get started with any of this. Once you get started, you're going to have to clone the repository. So you can do that by using git clone repository URL. The way you can also get it is by going up here, and this will give you the repository URL. I use SSH. SSH is a more secure way of doing it, and it's also going to require a couple of extra steps. But once you have installed everything, your setup should look like this. Because you are going to have cloned everything onto your local machine, and then you're going to have all of the code that's right in front of you, right here. And then you're going to need to run AZ login. When you run AZ login from your command right here, it's going to open up a separate window, and then it's going to ask you for the email account that you are using to log in. And then once you try to log in with that, it's going to ask you what the password for that email account is. So you need to put all of that information in. And once you've done AZ login and you've connected it to your subscription, then you're good to go. After you've run AZ login, it's going to give you a list of all the subscriptions, and it's going to assign a number for each one of them. I only have one, so I would just need to type 1, but maybe if you had 5 subscriptions, then you'd need to look at those 5, and it would give a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for each of those subscriptions, and you'd need to type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whichever one you want to use it for. And once you've done that, your setup is now connected to your Azure subscription, so it'll make the rest of this a smooth ride. And then after that, you are going to need to do the Terraform init. So first, before I continue, let me go back to this and explain a little bit more about this. So this is a basic setup, about as basic as Terraform can get when it comes to creating these resources. So when you are creating resources with Terraform, you are going to first put this resource keyword right here. And then you're going to specify what it is you're making. So in this case, it's the Azure RM resource group. So I'm making a resource group here. And then you give it a name that makes it unique right here. I just put it as main because it's the only resource group that I'm going to have. And then for this setup here, I'm going to be making a Kubernetes cluster. So I'm also going to need a virtual network. Some of these variables here I've just hard coded into here, but you normally want to pass variables into it. In your variables.tf file, I have set up all those variables right here. So when you are running this, you can insert your own variables, or you can just use the default variables that it puts here. If you want to change what the default variables are, such as with this one, let's say, for example, you wanted it to be West US instead, then you would just change it right here. And then that would change what variable is passed in to the main file, because when it asks for the variable location, it's going to get the default location here, assuming you don't pass anything in. In this case, it's East US, so that's what's going to be put in there. So I'm going to go through all of this quickly, but it's just supposed to be a quick explanation. I'm going to make subsequent videos where I'm going to explain more about all these things that are going on, but this is just a quick demonstration. And I'll be talking much more about what Terraform and Azure are in the future. So we have all of our different settings here. We have the resource group, we have the virtual network, and we have the Kubernetes cluster. So the way that we're going to get all of this run is that, well, the first thing you need to do is that you need to put in your subscription ID. This is my subscription ID. I showed you where to get it earlier. And when you clone the repository, it's just going to say your subscription ID. So be sure to copy whatever your subscription ID is and put it here. And then at this point, you are ready to continue. So we're going to run our first command, which is Terraform init, as in initialize. And what this is going to do is that it's going to install all of the providers that we need. Providers are required by Terraform to function with whatever it's working with. In this case, we need to install Azure. So it's going to follow the rules that I've set up here, which is that I say get any version that is 4.0 or later of Azure RM. So it's going to get that. The latest version today happens to just be 4.45.1. You're going to see that it creates some other folders here and files. I will get to that later. But now that Terraform has successfully been initialized, we can run the Terraform plan. So the Terraform plan is going to tell us what it's going to do on Azure. Now, if you want to pass in your own variables, and I put this on this page as well, then you can right here. So you have the option of changing the variables.tf file, but you can also change it on the command line right here. So if you wanted to change the resource group to my-rg, or if you wanted to change the location, it's already East US, but let's say if you want to change it to West US, then you could put this in, except this would be West instead of East. And that is how you run the Terraform plan with your own variables. But I like what it is right now, so I'm just going to run the Terraform plan. And now it's going to run everything, and it's going to tell me what it is that it's going to do. At this point, I'm going to give it a quick stop, the video, and I'm going to continue it once the Terraform plan. Oh, wait, no, it's finished. Never mind, I didn't have to stop. That was quick. So it's going to tell me all the things that it plans to create. Now, keep in mind, this is just a plan. It doesn't know if it's actually going to work, but it's telling me that it's going to go and it's going to create 3 resources right here at the bottom. The plan is to create resources, change none of them, destroy none of them. So it tells me that I have a virtual network that I'm trying to create with this address space and all these other things. I have a resource group that I'm trying to create, and I also have a Kubernetes cluster that I'm trying to create. So now that we have all of that going on, we can run our Terraform apply phase. I'm going to put in auto approve so that when it asks me about whether I do want to do this, it's just going to continue. You don't have to do this, but it's just a little bit of an easier way to make it go through. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video now. And when it has run everything, I'm going to unpause the video. All right, so at this point, it has finished. You can always see what it says right here at the end. Apply complete. You will love the green. The green is amazing. So if you look back on all the logs, it was constantly updating me about what it was progressing on. So it was telling me that it started creating the resource group. It created it after 13 seconds. It started creating the virtual network. It created it after 17 seconds. And then the Kubernetes cluster took a while. So it created all three of the resources, and then made some outputs. And now that that's done, we can go on to Azure, our Azure subscription, and we can see here. So the resource group that I made was called My Resource Group. It previously didn't exist here. And if I click onto this resource group, I created the virtual network and the Kubernetes cluster inside of that resource group. You don't have to go to the resource group exactly. You can go up here to the top and you can search for it, such as the virtual network. And you can also find it here. So right here, my VNet name. So I made that there, but let's go back here to the resource group. I can check some settings that I've made on my virtual network. Azure has made a lot of settings for me. There are some things that I need to specify, such as which resource group it's part of, what the location is part of, and also what the address space is part of. I've also made a subnet in this. So if I go to subnets right here, I'll see my subnet. A subnet is required for a Kubernetes cluster to be able to use some of the IP addresses. So that's why I made a subnet. But now let's go to the cluster. So the cluster is right here. Okay, it says it's deleting. Why is it saying that? Okay. I'm not sure why I was saying that. That wasn't right. So it says here that it's running and that is in a succeeded state. If your cluster is in a failed state, that means that the cluster is still running, but some operations may not be working. But we can look here and see everything with our Kubernetes cluster. We can see what version it's using. We can see how many node pools there are. We can see all these things. So we'll be exploring all these things in the future. But for now, let's go back and go to here. And now we can use Terraform to destroy all of those things. So I'm going to run the Terraform destroy. I am going to also, once again, use the auto approve. So that way it's going to take everything that I just made and it's going to destroy it. So I'm once again going to stop the video. At this point in time, it has completed the destroying. So it had to destroy things in the proper order. So it destroyed the Kubernetes cluster first, which took several minutes. And then it destroyed the virtual network. And then it destroyed the Kubernetes cluster. So let's go back to our Azure subscription. If I try and refresh it here, then it complains that the resource no longer exists. So it's giving me an error. And I can try it with these other things here. These resources don't exist anymore. I can also search for the resource group, which is no longer here. So everything has successfully been deleted. Now, if you go here to the releases, I'm going to publish a release. This is going to be the first release of this repository, so you can see everything exactly as it was written today. And I will put what the release is in the description of the video. So if you want to try this out for yourself, you can see the repository exactly as I did it today. And this repository is going to develop a lot over time. I'm going to add a lot more things and show a lot more things. And I'm going to make a new version for each one of those videos. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.